Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all shapes and sizes, welcome back to Rossoneri TV. I'm Adamo Tackle as per usual. Today, I'll be having a little bit of a discussion on Sinisa Mihajlovic and whether or not the AC Milan coach should be under such fire and should he be sacked come the end of the season. Now, I'm going to start off this video by saying I do not think Mihajlovic should be sacked. And if you already disagree, little disclaimer, please hear me out, watch the full video, get my full perspective, and then put your comments down below whether you agree, whether you disagree. Maybe my way of thinking isn't the best way of thinking, so it'd be good to have kind of an open mind and see what you guys think on the scenario, to try to see things in a different light. Anyways, as I said, I do not think Mihajlovic's job should be under question at all. You can go back in the Rossoneri TV video somewhere from when he was appointed, I guess, somewhere along that timeline. You can hear me say practically these exact words, that Mihajlovic was not brought in to win Milan the Champions League. He was not brought in to win Milan the Scudetto, whether or not that's what Berlusconi wanted. Mihajlovic was brought in with his grit, with his determination, with his strength and his appearance and his ego, to kind of be the glue that gels the whole team together, to be the man who gives the identity back to AC Milan that was torn apart years ago, whether that been from Allegri, Inzaghi, Seedorf, whatever the case may have been. We clearly were a team that teams weren't afraid to come up against. Now, when you come against Milan, not like we're some Juventus type team that you know that you're almost certainly going to lose, so you got to kind of change your mindset on the opposition. But we're something that you got to worry about. You got to prepare for this AC Milan team, not like in past years where you could literally go out there, beat Hellas Verona and beat us 2-0. Or I don't even know if that was a result last year. Probably possible. You never know with AC Milan. But anyways, pretty much my point is, Mihajlovic has given us somewhat of an identity. We're not completely the AC Milan that we used to be, of course. It's only been a season, which I'll get into later, or half a season actually. But he's starting to kind of build that relationship with AC Milan to put the fear into the opponents, to know that we're a side that you should be afraid of, you should be very prepared up for, and the odds are that we're going to beat you because we're AC Milan. So I think he's kind of instilling that kind of fear factor into the team and gluing them all together and giving us an identity back and playing with an actual style rather than just throwing the team out there with a full 11 and just hoping that they do something good. The only time we didn't see that in the recent years is probably Seedorf. I say he had a more possession style game, but regardless, I like the way Mihajlovic kind of sets the plays out there to go tactics wise. My next point, we went from playing probably the most terrible football I've ever seen in my life, or at least by AC Milan, or a team that claimed to be a top 3 team, to showing actual grit and fire in our performances. Now, obviously, we're an inconsistent team, but we went from last season to saying, oh, we'll take anything but this. Then once we get anything but that and something that's actually much better in the form of Mihajlovic, we're complaining that we should be contending for the Champions League, and our excuse for that being that we spent all this money. Well, if if you go back in the years and look at everybody's tweets, we clearly said that yes, the squall was a big problem, but it was mostly down to the management and the poisonous factor of AC Milan and how the whole club was just run like horribly. And now you also have to consider, if you're going to go into detail, that Milan spent 80 odd million. Well, first of all, Bertolacci, which was a big portion of that 80 odd million, hasn't done anything all season, so that goes out the window. Pretty much it's Romagnoli and Carlos Bacca holding the team together. As well as Bonaventura, sometimes Montolivo. But yeah, you get my point. But if you're going to go into those kind of details and say the negatives against Mihajlovic, you have to say the positives. Look at the rest of the Serie A. The entire league, this is probably the most competitive year it's seen in a number of years. Juventus, they had a tough start, got back on it. Now they're arguably the best team in the league once again. But you got teams like Roma picking it back up with Spalletti. You got Lazio, who's kind of on and off. I wouldn't say they're too much of a threat. You got Fiorentina, Inter, Napoli, especially under Sarri, who have made a big upgrade. All those teams, they've been so much better, and even some of the mid-table sides have been better this year. So it's kind of hard to say, oh, Milan spent this, so we should be doing that. Especially after coming off a terrible season, you can't expect Mihajlovic just to turn the squad around just because we spent 80 million in one season. So I do think these expectations are realistic after 2-3 years of coaching the team. Not the first year, especially when we're only about 6th place. We're going to make the final of the Coppa Italia almost guaranteed. Now we face Alessandria in the second leg. But these are achievements that Milan have been reaching, and we're kind of saying, oh, we should be fighting for the Scudetto, we should be making Champions League. I completely understand that's the goals that we want to have, But we have to be realistic. Look at the rest of the league. Look at how everybody else is performing. And look where we just came from. We just came from being arguably the worst Milan ever. So I think that, maybe we should have a bit more patience with Mihajlovic. Now, regardless, the past 14 to 15 games, Milan have managed about 9 wins, 4 draws with only 1 loss, which is incredible for AC Milan in the past years. It's impossible for Mihajlovic to win. Some people out there, they have very, very negative mindsets on him. After a 3-0 win over Inter, everybody said, okay, yeah, we beat Inter, but, since we're inconsistent, are we going to beat Palermo? They're the real test. We need to see if we can beat a mid-table side in Palermo because we're way too inconsistent. We beat them. Then after the game, people say, oh, it's just a Palermo. That proves nothing. So if you look at that situation, how is Mihajlovic going to win? I don't know. That it just doesn't make any sense to me. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Mihajlovic has had this fantastic season where he's took Milan to the top, and now we're going to win the Coppa Italia. We're going to qualify for Champions League. I'm just saying we should be more appreciative of what we've actually got and not use the excuse of, oh, we spent 80 million, because really look at the rest of the league. They've been performing 10 times better than they did last season. You look at our rivals in Fiorentina, a team that always finished below us, despite us always having a poor season, now skyrocketing with Paulo Sousa, and you can't really stop them. So I think we need to consider all the factors and think that Milan just came off something, one of their worst possible turmoils they've ever had in the history of the club. And, maybe it's going to take some time to actually heal that more than half the season. You look at Manchester United, they spend millions and millions and millions of dollars. Obviously, you can say Louis van Gaal has done a poor job, but realistically, he's trying to scrap things out with the squad. He's obviously a very experienced manager, and just because you spend money doesn't mean they're going to have the best squads. Look at the Premier League teams in the Champions League. They've been piss poor, which is why the Serie A might get their 4th Champions League spot back. And we spent half the money that they spend, maybe even less, maybe even a quarter, maybe even a sixth. I don't know. All I know is that money doesn't mean everything, and I think the excuse of we spent 80 million is kind of foolish, even though it does make a factor. You do have to consider that, but I think the positives of Mihajlovic outweigh the negatives. And that's more so my point of what I'm trying to say. The moral of the discussion is we haven't been the best, but you can't expect that form or from a side to that just came off the worst season. As I said multiple times, we literally just came off the worst possible era of AC Milan under Inzaghi, under Allegri, under Seedorf, and now we're expecting the challenge for the Scudetto when the Serie A has been most competitive it's ever been in, who knows, maybe 10 years, 5, 10 years. So I do think that Milan should be getting some more slack here, especially Mihajlovic. I don't think he should be fired, and it really pisses me off that Mr. Berlusconi over there keeps saying that his job is under question, even though it shouldn't be, because out of 15 games, as I mentioned, we've been fantastic. So I think that, Mihajlovic should get a bit more credit than he has been. Anyways, I'm going to cut this video a bit short before I go on too much of a rant. Let me know down below what you think. Have I made some valid points, or some of my things sounding stupid? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think he should be sacked by the end of the season for somebody like Conte, who may be going to Chelsea, by the way, or somebody else maybe? Or do you think we should stick with Mihajlovic and give faith in him, because he has kind of proven to mold this team together and give ourselves kind of an identity, as I said. Anyways, let me know what you think down below. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe to Rossoneri TV as usual, and as always, Forza Milan!